Generally, the image we have of Samson is that of a man of great stature and long hair, known for his incredible feats. Many believe that the secret to his extraordinary strength was in his hair, since he lost that strength when Delilah, the woman he loved, cut his hair as part of a trap. However, this idea is a common misconception about the story told in the Bible. In fact, the Bible does not make a direct connection between Samson's strength and his hair. This popular understanding comes from a misinterpretation of the sacred texts. In this video, we will clarify this point and explore the true source of Samson's strength as reported in the Bible. Many people think that Samson's strength came from his long hair, especially after he lost it when Delilah cut it in an ambush. However, upon closer examination of the biblical story, it becomes clear that this idea is not correct. Indeed, the true source of Samson's strength lay in his special relationship with God, which was linked to his commitment to live dedicated to him, and not to the length of his hair. To understand where his strength came from, it is essential to know why he could not cut his hair. As the Bible reports, with the announcement of Samson's birth by an angel of the Lord, his parents were informed that he would be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from birth until death. This commitment was crucial because God had chosen him to liberate Israel from the Philistines, as described in the book of Judges, chapter 13, verses 1 to 5. Therefore, Samson's dedication as a Nazirite was essential for his divine mission. Being a Nazirite involves a deep commitment to devotion to God. Many Israelites chose to take this vow for a specific period during their lives. However, some, like Samson, were Nazirites from birth, consecrated by their parents to God for their entire lives. Samson, being a Nazirite from the beginning, had to strictly follow the rules of this vow. This included several prohibitions. He could not consume grapes or derived products, such as wine. He was also forbidden from touching corpses or cutting his hair. These rules are explained in the book of Numbers, chapter 6. By adhering to these restrictions, Samson not only demonstrated his obedience, but also stood out as someone specially chosen by God to liberate the Israelites, marking his complete dedication to God. Samson could not cut his hair not because they were the source of his strength, but because they represented a visible symbol of his dedication to God. This raises questions such as, why then did Samson tell Delilah that the secret of his strength was in not cutting his hair? Or why did his strength leave when his hair was cut? Firstly, it is crucial to understand that the Bible indicates that Samson's true strength came from God. This is evidenced in Judges chapter 13 verse 25, which mentions how the Spirit of God acted in him. Samson's extraordinary strength truly derived from the Spirit of the Lord acting within him, not from the length of his hair. The biblical text makes this clear. For example, when Samson defeated a lion with his bare hands, Judges chapter 14 verse 6 emphasizes that it was the Spirit of the Lord that strengthened him at that moment. Similarly, in Judges chapter 14 verse 19, the Spirit of God also gave Samson the ability to defeat 30 Philistines in Ashkelon. Later, in verses 14 to 20 of chapter 15, the same Spirit strengthened him again, allowing him to defeat 1,000 men using only the jawbone of a donkey. Finally, at his death, Samson managed to bring down the temple of Dagon, a god of the Philistines, killing more enemies than at any other time in his life. This occurred after he prayed to God to restore his great strength one last time, as described in Judges chapter 16, verse 28. It is important to highlight that Samson often did not follow the laws and commandments stipulated by God, as well as the strict rules of his Nazirite vow. Throughout his life, he frequently ignored the norms that demanded complete and rigorous dedication. For example, he came into direct contact with corpses, which was totally forbidden by his vow. Moreover, in a notable incident, he ate honey he found inside a dead lion he had defeated, thus ignoring the rule that prohibited touching dead bodies. In addition to these behaviors, Samson also attended a Philistine wedding feast where, as was common, wine and other fermented beverages were consumed, which were forbidden by his Nazirite vow. His presence at this event not only demonstrated a failure to adhere to the restrictions of his vow, but also reflected a disregard for the spiritual consequences of his actions. Each of these actions represented a significant breach of the principles that should guide his life and mission, showing personal flaws that would eventually contribute to his downfall. The last violation committed by Samson was allowing Delilah to cut his hair. This act not only revealed the secret of his spiritual commitment, but also signified a breach of that sacred vow. By letting Delilah use the razor, Samson demonstrated a significant lapse in his spiritual responsibility. Although many believed that his strength lay in his hair, in reality, that strength came directly from God, through the Spirit of God. Thanks to this divine power, Samson performed extraordinary feats. However, by revealing and disobeying the prohibition against cutting his hair, he significantly renounced his commitment and obedience to God. By allowing Delilah to cut his hair, Samson not only compromised his physical strength, but also dishonored the sacred commitment he had maintained since birth. Thus, Samson's strength did not derive from his physique or his long hair, but was a manifestation of the power of God in his life, which depended on his fidelity and obedience to divine laws. By ignoring these demands, he lost not only his supernatural abilities, but also his status and divine protection. This final act of cutting his hair was more than just a physical alteration. It represented a symbolic and actual break from his divinely appointed role, highlighting the seriousness of straying from the paths defined by the Creator. You might not have noticed, but when Samson had his hair cut, it meant more than just a change in appearance. This act symbolized the violation of the last of his Nazirite vows. After this event, Samson reflected on his actions and, recognizing his mistake, prayed to God to restore his strength. Interestingly, the Bible reports in the book of Judges, chapter 16, verse 22, that Samson's hair began to grow again during this period. This growth was not a mere detail. It represented the possibility for Samson to renew his commitment to God. The regrowth of his hair was a symbol that he had the opportunity to reinstate his Nazirite vow and start a new chapter of dedication and fidelity to divine purposes. This episode underscores the message that there is always room for redemption and new beginnings, even after failures that seem definitive. God answered Samson's prayer, restoring his divine strength for the last time. This gesture not only reaffirmed the sovereignty of God, but also elevated his name, inspiring awe and reverence across the land. This divine intervention was reflected in Samson, who, in the eyes of humans, appeared as the most powerful of Israel's heroes, but paradoxically was also the most vulnerable. The combination of his great strength and his fragility became clear in the way he handled, or failed to handle, the extraordinary talent that God had bestowed upon him. The restoration of Samson's strength was more than just an act of power, it was a profound lesson on mercy and redemption. Despite the serious mistakes and character flaws that Samson displayed throughout his life, God's willingness to answer his final plea underscores a central theme of the Scriptures: the hope for renewal, even for those who seem to have strayed irreversibly. In his final act, Samson achieved not just a physical victory, he also glorified the name of the Lord, showing that even the most imperfect can be redeemed if they sincerely turn their hearts to God. This event highlights the greatness of divine forgiveness and the possibility of transformation even in the most challenging moments of a life. Many scholars and biblical commentators consider Samson a classic example of great potential that was wasted. Despite his incredible displays of strength and the numerous victories he achieved against the Philistines, the truth is that Samson never fully freed his people from foreign oppression during his lifetime. This prompts reflections on the effectiveness of his actions and how he managed his divine role. The biblical texts indicate that although Samson possessed supernatural strength and faced his enemies under extremely adverse conditions, his actions were often impulsive and driven by personal motivations, rather than being strategically planned for the collective benefit of Israel. This tendency to act based on personal impulses, often fueled by a desire for vengeance, meant that his victories were temporary and did not lead to a lasting liberation for the Israelites. Samson's trajectory is notable not only for his extraordinary physical feats, but also for a series of personal decisions and moral failures that compromised his leadership as a judge of Israel. An example of this is his involvement with Philistine women, which was a clear violation of the rules and guidelines of his tribe and his Nazirite vow. Such behaviors challenged the expectations of his community and highlighted his difficulty in adhering to the principles that should guide his actions and decisions. These problematic choices led to ongoing conflicts with the Philistines. Although some of these battles ended in remarkable victories, they did not effectively or permanently resolve the conflicts between the Israelites and the Philistines. Moreover, his relationships with women seen as enemies distanced Samson not only from the counsel of his tribe, but also from the divine principles that should guide a leader chosen by God. This revealed a growing gap between his impulsive decisions and the values of wisdom, justice, and spiritual leadership expected of a judge in Israel. This repetitive pattern of behavior eventually eroded the authority and respect that Samson had among his people. They began to see him not as the prudent and wise leader they needed, but as someone driven by personal impulses and desires. These failures not only reduced his effectiveness as a judge, but also contributed to his capture and ultimate downfall, a fate that could have been avoided if he had adhered more strictly to the precepts and traditions of his faith and community. Samson's story clearly illustrates the risks when a leader does not stay true to ethical and moral principles, emphasizing the importance of maintaining integrity and fidelity to fundamental values. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling us if you already knew about the true source of Samson's strength. A hug, and may God bless you.